Don't worry, I wasn't gonna jump. People have always freaked out at how I like to lean from high ledges. I just like to see the view and imagine how amazing it would feel to fall. But no, it wasn't something deeper than that. I liked living. Maybe it seemed like I don't want to, but I did. I wasn't really interested in life ending and was sort of avoiding it, or running from it. Running from the idea of it ending. But it couldn't keep going, not this way. I thought, something's gotta give. You see, grief is a tricky thing, and it compounds. I don't want to get into it, but I had a spell of losses that were excruciating. To put it plainly, my mother passed a few months after father, and my dear friend shortly thereafter. And in the cruel way the world works, I lost even more family and friends through the process. They say that grief doesn't get smaller, you just grow larger around it. I didn't have the time to wait to grow around it. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just knew I didn't have time. But I couldn't find the escape hatch. Life finds a way, though. I began to save myself in a way. It began sort of innocuous, that dry summer. I'd always had bouts of flightiness and had a spell of sleepwalking incidents when I was in second grade. But this was bigger. The first instance was at work. I laid my head down to rest for a moment. This was not out of the ordinary, especially during this part of my life. But when I awoke, it was hours later, and I was home. I had even written a note to my coworkers, excusing myself for a sour stomach. No problem. But it became bigger and more dramatic rapidly. Sometimes I'd go to bed and wake up days later in a different state. We're in the middle of the grocery store. Poof. Suddenly, my memory would give out and I'd find myself back home having dinner. Except this food hadn't been in my basket. And actually, this isn't even my home. Though it frightened me at first, I began to crave it. I tried to trigger it. Like falling asleep, the more I thought about it, the less it happened. But eventually, with perfect trust and real relaxation, it came back stronger than ever. My brain had excused me from needing to make decisions. I was on autopilot, or maybe we'd call it something else. These decisions weren't decisions I would typically make. I'd find myself coming to in the middle of a run. I hadn't run since the incident with the dog. Or at a house party. I couldn't stomach conversation since all those funerals. Or even led to the edge of a building. It scared me, but it thrilled me. Though I didn't know what happened in these bouts, I could glean ideas. It was like observing a black hole. Apparent only by the material spewed around itself. I could feel the sweat or the elation or the alcohol or the anger. I suddenly found myself on a street I'd never been on or a place I'd never been. These days, I was thrilled to feel anything at all. I found myself all over. At first nearby in Detroit or Ann Arbor or even Mingo near Urbana. But it got farther and farther. Montana, Utah, New York, even Florida. Though that may have been just a rental license plate. I didn't have enough time really to check. Over that summer, the bouts became longer and longer. I was riding in the sidecar of my own life. My waking hours were just long enough for me to check in with myself and ensure the few responsibilities I maintained were taken care of. Besides that, I didn't care what happened. I didn't even know what this house was that I was living in. Though I knew reckless and risky things were happening, there were observable improvements. I felt happier when I came to. I could sense a stability. My room was cleaner. I saw athletic changes in my body. So who was I to judge my other half? I've always been obsessed with my body, but now it was even more intense. My body was a map, or maybe more correctly, a record. Bigger or smaller muscles, fatter or thinner legs, scab knees, freckly skin, these things were indicators of what I might be doing. I had to reverse interpret. Eventually, I went over altogether. I had no choice, but I would have chosen it anyway.